What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grind Line Podcast. I'm your host, Greg. You're listening to episode 285. I am here tonight with Ryan and Tyler, and it's dead, guys. Like you don't even have to pay attention to anything because if you haven't been on
Thank God.
Twitter in like 4 days, you've missed absolutely nothing except for today was Dylan Larkin's birthday. So happy birthday to Dylan Larkin. But
Happy
how are you guys
birthday.
doing?
I'm actually amazed I have a bit of a voice right now. It's been gone. We were softball tournament this past weekend. Did some yelling just because there's so many games going on. So trying to yell things to
Happy
my
yelling
outfield.
or angry yelling?
Directional yelling. Does that count as either or?
Oh, instructional yelling. Yes.
Yeah. Like just trying to holler to the outfield was a process because every game there was four other games immediately around you. And if you've paid attention to girls softball ever, it's nonstop chants and it's very hard to yell over them. And then there's other teams that have a whole freaking boombox system that play walk-up songs or they're playing music in between innings. And it's very difficult to try to say things. Hence the state of my voice.
Why don't you have a megaphone?
It's actually not a bad idea. Just walk
Yeah, that or
around
one
with
of those
this.
giant
Yeah.
cheerleading cones.
I don't know. The moms bought these Vuvuzela type things this past weekend, and I wanted to commit a felony. I won't say the
Yeah.
other words.
So mental note, buy Ryan a megaphone. Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing great. He needs like one of those bull horns that the cops have and just
Yeah,
fucking
get the
just
siren on it.
yelling,
That's how I get their
using that
attention.
using
Then
that
the
thing.
girls will get a
But
hold of
no,
it and they'll start using it for their chants.
it's unbelievable how there hasn't been like really any hockey news to talk about other than Travis Konechny and then one other
Say there's
extension
been
that we'll
news,
talk
just
about.
nothing for Detroit.
Why did the Flyers think it was necessary to sign Travis Konechny? I don't understand that. He's like 30, isn't he? Or is he younger than I
I
thought?
thought he was younger. Hold on. He's
I'm not saying he's a
Travis
27.
Konechny
bad
is
player.
27 years old.
When's his birthday?
Oh, okay.
March 11th.
Yeah, so he'll be going 28, 8-year deal, takes him to 35, 36.
Why did the Flyers need to do
Because
that of
he's
all
like one of
teams,
the
though?
only good players they have. And they have what? They have Mitch Koffs coming in like next season, right? So maybe
Yep.
they try and jumpstart it a little bit. He becomes like the veteran on the team and he helps Mitch Koff get used to the NHL.
That's a to me that's a high pay. What was his expected salary on that one? Because that just seems excessive.
He got 8,
He
right?
got 875 per year.
His expected was 8 years, 8.828.
Huh.
So they got him at a little bit of a deal.
Sign him. Like to me, it just doesn't make a whole lot of
Back to
sense.
back 30-goal seasons. I mean, I guess so. That's going to be the going rate for stud wingers. I mean, I guess that's what you could almost say is a possibility for Raymond
Yeah, close
Raymond.
if
close
you're
to
going
that,
long
maybe a
term.
little bit less because of the lack of history.
Yeah.
But I think that's maybe where we'll start tonight. So tonight we do have second half of the episode. We will be doing hot takes. Actually, it might start in the first half of the episode and move into the second. But we're going to start with the other deal that happened in the league, and that was the Minnesota Wild signing Brock Faber. Brock Faber signed an 8-year, $8.5 million deal. If you look at Jay Fresh's card, I'll put his tweet up on the screen. But he had a 40% WAR with a 34 offense, 53 defense, and he's 22 years old. I mean, he plays 25 minutes a night. This is where you look at it and you really kind of wish that Seider was already signed before this. Because Seider, being a year older, Seider does get harder deployment. Point totals are similar. I think if Seider's deployment was a little bit easier, he would have more points. Obviously, that opens up his offense and exposes him to some easier matchups. But they're kind of really, really similar, besides, like I said, that Seider plays against harder players most of the time. So if you put that at an 8-year, 8.5, I think it's fair to say that Seider's probably, if you land him on an 8-year deal, it's now pushing between 9 and 10, which is kind of where you didn't want to be right now. You wanted to get that done first, and you wanted Seider to kind of like sign this deal, this 8 by 8.5, and get it out of the way. And now you're moving into the 9 to 10 range because Seider is a better player, as it stands right now, a better player than Brock Faber, has more history than Brock Faber, not much more, but has more, and is your number one defenseman for the foreseeable future. So, I mean, good deal for Brock Faber because he was projected, I think he was projected lower than that. So it was what would have been a predicted overpay too by the Wild. He was predicted to get a 7-year, 7.079 million. Even at an 8-year, only a 4% chance of him signing an 8-year deal at 7.742. So you're setting the market high. You overpaid that guy, which is now, if you're Claude Lemieux, you're saying, hey, look, what Faber just got, our guy's better.
Yeah, it turns into a bit of a slippery slope because Minnesota, you could argue, not saying he is. I like Faber. I think he's a great young player, but
He's
they're
Charlie McAvoy with a slightly squished face. They look almost identical.
I'm gonna need to see that side by side when you mention that. But when you look at how Minnesota kind of handled this, it's almost they're paying him for what might happen. Not saying that's a stretch per se. Can be dangerous. Yeah, that actually is pretty similar. That's kind of creepy, actually. If you can do Faber's hair the same way as McAvoy, I hope you actually have this up right now.
I'll put
Like
it up. It's creepily similar, like
they
really
do look
creepy.
separated at birth, and it creeps me out. Anyways, but no, I mean it's the body of work for Mo is there, and to your point, yeah, in a way, it's kind of nice that he hasn't had more offensive time to this point because he would be blowing the points away. I mean, Faber had a decent year last year, but you look at Seider, it's been pretty consistent in terms of the same point totals. It could be like, hey, we're the same age. What's this contract? I'm still torn though if they're looking at a long-term deal, only because of the tendencies we've seen, and we're really going back to what I've mentioned before with Tampa and how he handled the Hedman and Cooch contracts. I still am kind of leaning that direction of what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think this Faber deal almost forces you into a bridge. Tyler, are we all on track? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I don't love that, but I also don't hate it because you don't want to bet on anything. Obviously, you don't wish for injury or anything like that, or a year where someone's game goes to hell or slightly dips. But yeah, I mean, a bridge deal kind of has to be the thing at this point. I mean, unless you're going to give them an 8 times 9.1, 8 times 9.5, 8 times 10. Like I don't know what you're supposed to do at this point because I mean the cap is going up. So I guess if you really want to just get this done, you could do 8 times 9.5 or 8 times 9.175, call it, or something like that. And that probably gets it done. It looks like an overpay right now, but then, maybe a couple years down the line, it's like, wow, what a good contract. The Wings have, Seider locked up for another 6 years at 9.175 per year. Like, wow. So, like, my gut feeling is like, oh, maybe they'll do the bridge, but I feel like you screw yourself if you do the bridge. I feel like if you do the 8-year deal now with both Seider and Raymond, yes, it might hamstring you a little bit right now, but then you have them locked up going forward when the cap goes up. And then you don't have to deal with them getting a raise after 2 years of a bridge
I
deal.
think that's what they've been saying about the Faber deal is that it might look like a slight overpay now, but in a few seasons it's going to look like a damn good deal when he's in the prime, and it takes him basically through his this deal takes him through his prime years, which is kind of why you want to do the same thing with Sider is take him that deal that takes him through his prime years.
Hmm.
But I think the point stands that this deal, if they look at it and if the agent looks at it and uses it as a benchmark, you're forcing one of Sider or Raymond into a bridge. If one of them is making over 9, the other one is getting bridged because there's only 17 and change left on the cap. So you're not going to give both of them, and then you still got to sign Berggren if you plan on doing that and not trading him. Unless you can move cap off, you're going to have to bridge one of them. I think the safer bet for a bridge is probably Raymond. If you would say, "Hey Ray, we're going to give you a 2-year deal, And we want to just see that you can reproduce what you did last season. Go out there and hit 80 points. Go be a point per game player this season. And then you'll get a huge contract. But like we mentioned last episode, that only runs you into the issue of also having to sign some other guys like Edvinson at the same time. Although that will be Edvinson's first actual contract that's past his entry level. So that too could be a couple years if, unless they want to extend him long term. You just start running into guys you're going to have to resign. So this kind of, I think, pushes one or both of Mo and Raymond into a bridge deal. The other thing we normally bring up is percentage of contract, like percentage of the cap that the contract takes up. Larkin, when he was signed to his deal last season, was signed to 8 years at a value of 69.6 million. Nice. But it was 10.42% of the cap. So he's your best forward. I mean, he's your captain, he's your best forward. Mo Seider on the same percentage of the cap going into next season would be about a $9.2 million deal. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. And even if you took him down to a $9 million deal, he would come in under the cap hit percentage that Dylan Larkin had when he signed his contract. So I think it's not far off.
No, and I think we talked about this with Raymond a couple weeks ago, and or actually, I was looking at the Hedman and Kucherov deals. I refer to those the most. People are probably like, "What the hell are you talking? Why do you keep going back to them?" Because Eiserman was in charge of those deals. They're and even going back to Stamkos. I think it was between I forget what it was off the top of my head without looking. I'll check it out real quick. But what ends up happening with those kind of deals, and as Tyler just hinted to a little bit ago, in the next couple of seasons, this turns into a very team friendly situation. And that's what we're at with Dylan Larkin right now. Is he paid an exorbitant amount? No, I don't think so. Because you go back and look at Steven Stamkos when he was through into his prime, his expiring contract that he just left, which he signed back at the age of 26. He signed for 11.64% of the cap. Not saying that we have a guy that Raymond's going to sign for that, but that's to your point, Greg. I think an important factor as we go along because, yeah, the number that they might get is going to be similar to some of these contracts that we saw, but it's still a less of a hit to the cap, which hopefully we can keep that and remember that by. Because just look at the NFL, for instance, the crazy contracts that have been going out because of the rising cap situation. But in the grand scheme of it, you're just like, oh, it's actually not much more affecting the team than what we've seen. Now, guys are indeed getting paid more, which is freaking awesome for them. Good for you. You got a good agent at that point, and that's what we're going to start seeing that with the NHL. Is it going to be a $40 million contract? Obviously not, but we're going to see guys like Raymond and Seider in the next couple of years, and we're not even talking about other players that are going to be impacted by this cap going up on Detroit that are going to get paid money that you're just like, why is this so much money? Look at Joe Veleno. People were like going back and forth on the Veleno contract here recently, but you look at the grand scheme again, going back to the percentage hit. It's really not much. It's actually less than what a guy like Darren Helm was getting when he was almost more of an impact, arguably more of an impact player. So I just want to get it done. Know what we got. And mainly because I want to know what's going to happen with Burgers because he's going to be the guy on the outside looking in with those two deals getting locked into place. Now, from the arbitration case, they still have buyout opportunity, but that has to be on a guy with a $4 million and up salary, which would leave you with a Billy Huso situation.
That second buyout window is already closed.
Oh, so there you go.
The buyout window begins 3 days after arbitration is settled or awarded, and the team gets a 48-hour buyout window starting 3 days after. So that's already ended.
Neat. So it's everything that I just said doesn't matter. So something's going to have to give by end of fall or start of fall, I should say.
As they say, they'll fight for spots in camp.
Yeah, I mean, my problem with it is like you'd rather be. Usually, Steve Eiserman is patient and deliberate, but when it comes time to be aggressive, he's aggressive, right? Like, and this is what I don't understand about these two situations in particular, it's like these are the situations where you're better off being proactive than reactive. Because now, no matter what he does in the Seider situation, it's going to be reactive to what happened with Brock Faber, in my opinion. They had realistically pretty much the same season. I think Faber had 45 points and Mo had 42 points, and they both played 82 games. Now the difference is Mo has played 3 NHL seasons. He's coming into his 4th NHL season. He's played 82 games in all 3 of his NHL seasons in his career. So, like, on one hand, it's like, okay, well, Mo's worth a lot more than Brock Faber. But on the other hand, it's like, well, you just had the same exact season as Brock Faber. So shouldn't it be apples to apples? I, I get both sides of the argument. My opinion is that again, like I said, they should have had this done a lot sooner. Like the other thing is like you have a glut of young defensemen. These guys aren't all going to be able to play. So what I mean, is your goal to make Grand Rapids a Calder Cup champion? Like, I don't understand. I mean, I know they're not ready to win yet. I know they're not ready, but like, could you make a trade with a young defenseman to bring someone in to help the depth on the back end? Like, I don't know. That's just kind of my thought, and obviously, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of still things that haven't been answered yet that we still wait on answers to, really. I mean, whether it be the defenseman situation, the goalie situation, these two contracts. It's a weird spot to be in my opinion. Not saying that it's a bad spot to be in. I don't think it's a bad spot whatsoever, but it's just a weird spot to be in. Usually Steve Eisenman is the guy setting the bar, not the guy chasing the bar. And not saying that he d- like deliberately is chasing the bar, but that's the way it looks if you're on the outside looking in.
I, I don't necessarily think that he's going to be chasing this one. I mean, I get where that could be the worry, and I can buy that. But really, all it does, like kind of what Greg was mentioning earlier, it just adds fuel to the fire for the agent side of things. But again, you've got a guy, and not saying is Bill Guerin still in charge over there in many?
Yep, Bill Guerin
Like
is still
he's
the
the guy.
GM.
you've got multiple guys that have been around for quite a while in terms of controlling teams and making these types of deals. So they're going to hold the cards. I don't blame Guerin for making this deal. I'm not going to blame Iserman for going short or long term on his deal, because you know that he's willing to do both, but he's also not going to let another team necessarily bully him into trying. Like, not saying they're doing it directly, but he's not going to let that what their move was dictate what happened. Now, that could all come out that after the fact, when he has a press conference when the deals are made, that they said, yeah, this did influence us a little bit.
So with that, I think, we'll get our break out of the way early and then we'll come back and do hot takes. So we'll give us a second word from BetterHelp and from DraftKings, and we'll be back for Hot Take Theater. This episode of the Grindline podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/THPN and get on your way to being your best self. In the age of social media, it looks like everyone has their life on track, but you only see the surface. Comparison is a thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. If the perfect social media lives of others are having you down, therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. Just remember that everyone needs a little bit of help sometimes. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries, and empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma, but also those who are having just trouble in their life in general. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Bet the action on the ice with DraftKings Sportsbook. It's never too early to get in your Stanley Cup predictions for the 24-25 season. Maybe not the Detroit Red Wings, but hey, maybe you think Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers might actually pull it off this time. So download the app now and use code THPN. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on hockey. That's code THPN only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. The crown is yours. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. And we're back. And people seem to like this. I don't know. We didn't do it last season. I think we did 2 seasons ago. Hot takes.
It's been a while. We did
It's been a
over-unders
while.
last year. That was more enjoyable.
But since there's no news and I'm currently watching replays of the Olympics, we're going to do hot take theater tonight.
God.
And each of us have 2. Now, they don't have to be specifically team related. They can be both team related or one team, one league related. And we're just going to make shit up and hope we're right. And actually, we're going to talk it. We're going to speak it into existence, these things. And hopefully, we're just manifesting some good luck for the team. But I think I'm going to start with Tyler tonight. Tyler, give me your first hot take, and then me and Ryan will give you some reactions to it.
All right, hot take. Just brace yourself for this. I know I'm going to get pushback from this. I don't think the on-ice Fanatics jerseys will be as bad as people think.
So you're hopeful.
In fact, I think that might be
You're hopeful for Fanatics on-ice jerseys. So, like,
I think they'll be.
You don't think they'll be like as bad as the MLB jerseys were?
No, because I think they learned a lesson from the MLB ones, and I also think that MLB, the Nike Fanatics MLB thing, I think it was a lot of Nike's like quote unquote input. Like, hey, let's make the letters smaller. Let's make things different on the front. And I think Fanatics also had a point in that. But I think with the NHL, they have their factory set up that they've had since CCM, then it moved to Reebok, then it moved to Adidas, and it's the same exact factory up in Montreal. And I think the jersey quality for the players, I don't know about for us, the consumers, but for the players specifically, have always been good. The on-ice jersey product has always been good, and I don't think there'll be any change. Now, for the fan jerseys, I think you're gonna get the crap ones that you have now that are like $150, and then you're gonna be able to buy the $500 on-ice jersey. I don't think there's gonna be in the middle. I hope there is, but I don't think there will be. For some reason.
If they go the CCM route, because I know going over to Grand Rapids, you can go try to get a jersey there. They're what, between $400 and $500
They're stupid expensive.
for granted it's made in Canada, but I'm just like, no, why? But I think that's probably, I could see that happening, and that'll be probably the last jerseys I'll buy, and I'll just get it on eBay, looking for a blank white CCM and just customizing it at Vintage.
Well, that's how much they're selling the on ice jerseys through Fanatics now, and I think they are $450.
Yeah, well, that's what the MLB ones were through Nike, which Fanatics obviously made. Now, the only blueprint difference, maybe the NHL has somewhat of a say in this, because if you look at it, the CCM ones, there was always a fan model that represented kind of similar to the on-ice model. Same with Reebok, same with Adidas. Maybe the NHL will say, hey, look, we want 3 price points. We want a really cheap one. We want an in-between one. And we want a real
that's
expensive
the
one.
plan. They've already announced that.
Okay, so hopefully the middle one is similar to what the Adidas one is. Because even the Adidas ones that we bought is not the on-ice made in Canada one. So hopefully it just stays the same and you just get the stupid Fanatics logo on the back and we all live happily ever after. I don't know that will be the case, but maybe the NHL has to say, because I know with the NFL, there's the cheap model, there's the middle model, and I forget what the names are. And then there's I think the middle model is the limited, and then the higher one is the Vapor. The Vapor one is like $600 for like a authentic, but you're getting the tight sleeves and you're getting, a real NFL jersey, like what the players wear on the field. You probably don't even want to wear that. So, like, the middle one, hopefully the NHL fights for that and says, "You know what? We want our fans wearing jerseys. Not everyone can afford a $500 jersey. Let's have a middle price point." And that's my hope that they have that. But my hot take, to go back to it and to reel things in a little bit, is I don't think the NHL on ice jerseys by Fanatics will be as bad as everybody
I
thinks.
like your optimism. So we're gonna go. I'll do mine next. We'll go to this hot take, and it goes along with a question we got from one of our Patreon supporters, Brandon Case. Asks, does Edvinson top 40 points in his first full season? And I'll do you one better. I'm gonna say Simon Edvinson has 50 points in his first season. You got to think that he's comes in as your second best defenseman behind Mo Seider. You got to think that he's going to get some power play time. He hopefully will help ease some of the burden off of Mo through a first full season, and I think he has ample time if you're putting him on the second pair and exposing him to some weaker matchups like you did with Mo in his first season. Not that he was on the second pair all the time in his first season, but I think you're giving him some of the same favorability that Mo got in season one. And Edvinson does have offensive talent to him. We kind of, at the beginning, had kind of said Mo is going to be your defensive guy and Ed might be your offensive guy. And if that offense really comes through, I think Edvinson could have a 50-point season in his first season, full season for the Red Wings. And yeah, I would say 40 points. I think is I would say almost a given for him. But I'm saying that Edvinson will hit 50 points in his first season.
I don't know if this is going to be a hot take or not. I think I have to agree because we saw it with Mo in his rookie campaign. Now that does mean that Edmondson is likely, hopefully, going for a rookie of the year. Um,
I don't
is
think he's
he's eligible,
eligible.
right?
He's not eligible.
Why?
He has played more than 6 games in the NHL in the last 2 seasons. More than 6 games in each season.
I thought he was below. Scratch that. Reverse it. No, I don't think that's going to be a crazy thought with him coming in. We've seen what he can do in the AHL. He was putting up points, helping lead a power play unit there. Yeah, he had the growing pains, but that's all for good. And we're going to hopefully see that with Detroit this year. I think that if you're able to deploy him in a way that makes for favorable offensive zone faceoffs, you're going to have a third pairing that you can throw in the offensive zone. You're not going to be worried about them just completely shitting the bed because likely is that's where he'll be or split between the second and third pairs. And that's going to be a benefit that hopefully we didn't have last year. But what I think the icing on the cake for him is that his skating ability is what's going to help set him apart from a lot of the teams or a lot of the guys on this team and what we've seen over the last several years. And with the way that we've sort of watched breakouts go and things of that nature for Detroit and what we've talked about before is that he should hopefully play very well into the system that they're trying to implement. So I think 40 is absolutely doable and 50 is doable. Maybe it's not as much of a hot take, but I think that's pretty solid hope.
Cool, Ryan.
My favorite, aka most hated thing to do. This may not be actually a hot take on my part, or for many fans' parts, is Detroit misses the playoffs.
Oh, you son of a bitch. You're going to make us do a sad one. Okay.
which means they'll
Plead
make
your
it.
case.
I think that the way just they need healthy goaltending for one. I think that that can make or break them going into this year. They also need to find just consistency defensively. Yes, they got better, but it still ended up being what bit them in the long run. They went from having a plus 20 goal diff to I think what a plus 2 to finish the season out, almost back to 500 or 50-50 split, I should say. And they can't have that. So unless that changes, which many can argue that the defense really has not improved, which we'll see. Like we said, we just talked about Evanson. We know that Gustafson's going to bring something new. And we have a guy like Johansson potentially making this roster. He kind of has to, or he's getting waived and then has to clear waivers, and who knows what's going to happen. But as a whole, I mean, this roster should be better. But with new players comes new learning of responsibilities, comes new learning of a system. We saw several guys take most of the year last year and really almost an entire season before that. So guys that were here for 2 years, they didn't really start to figure things out until this past season. Like one big, for instance, is Ben Sherratt and Mo Seider. Year one, not a good combo. Last year, arguably one of the better combos we had for the team. Yes, Wallman was there. Wallman and Seider played well together for a good stretch. But when Seider and Sherratt got back together, it seemed to be a bit more of a formidable defensive pair. Will that carry over for Jeff Petrie? I hope so. He needed to. He's on the team. Justin Hall, who knows? I mean, he didn't hardly play last season as it is, but you need something from him likely this season. Gustafson's coming in brand new. Johansson, you could argue, is coming in brand new, and same with Edmondson. But then you've got several forwards that are going to be fresh, but majority will, at least on the forward side, thankfully, be guys that are coming back in. So there shouldn't be too much of an uphill curve there.
I don't think that the teams around them did enough to drastically improve enough to keep them out of the playoffs. I think that's my take on it. I would say I think that the defensive strengthening kind of boosts the team above the offense that they lost. Plus, people keep saying, "Oh, the offense that they lost, the offense that they lost." But you go back to, like we had talked about, a full year of Patrick Kane. Offense definitely brought in by a full year of Simon Edvinson. Offense by hopefully a healthy Rasmussen down the stretch helps both offensively and defensively. You bring in a Tarasenko to replace the points that are lost by Sprong, and hopefully the Berggren comes in and brings something to the table offensively as well. I think that the offense lost isn't as bad as what people make it out to be, but I think the defense gained is the bigger thing. And that as long as they stay healthy, the more steady goaltending, then Alex Lyon didn't have to worry about James Reimer running out there and laying an egg, or he doesn't have to play 40 games in a row because you don't have a solid backup. That there'll be enough breaks for him built in that he won't get worn out as quickly. And when your backup does come in, and hopefully what's going to be Cam Talbot, that there is strength there at that position to be able to hold it down, even if they do something like a 1A, 1B. So I can see a scenario completely where they miss the playoffs. At that point, the fans are going to be calling for Steve Yzerman's head. At that point, fairly or unfairly, they're going to be calling for his head. But I do think it's a hot take, so congratulations. But I do not think they will miss the playoffs.
I do have a hot take, and then I have a smaller hot take. So, hot take is that
Well,
Nate
hold on.
Danielson.
Yay or nay on the playoffs?
Yeah, you think they're in the playoffs, Tyler?
Oh, I think they're in the playoffs.
There you go. All right.
I think they're in the playoffs, but not because of specifically what they have done. It's because what Greg said, what a lot of what's around them didn't really get a whole lot better, and in some cases got worse. Like I know Boston got better, but how much better did Florida get? They didn't get better. There's other teams. The Sens didn't.
Buffalo
get
didn't
better.
drastically improve.
Buffalo barely
Toronto?
did anything. Toronto's lateral at best. Actually, they're probably worse. So, coaching wise, it might be better, but other than that, I don't know.
All right, you can do yours now. Go ahead.
All right, so hot take here. I think Nate Danielson is a top 2 line forward by the end of next season. Like this coming season.
See, I thought about doing a Nate Danielson one, and now I'm happy I didn't.
I think he makes the team out of camp. I think he gets his 7 or 8 game trial. He sticks around and he works his way up to the top 2 lines and is an impact forward right away. And that's one of the reasons why you do make the playoff.
Is that really a hot take though, Tyler? Is it hard? I guess, is it hard to push JT Comfort down to the 3rd line and push a guy out? Now, the thing that we talked about in the first half, the Seider and Raymond contracts, could force you to move someone like Berggren, and then there is an open spot. So I think that there is a decently, now I'm not going to say easy, but there is a viewable path for Nate Danielson to make it to the NHL this season. And if you listen to all the coaches off-season comments, every coach is like, Nate's amazing. Nate He tested that they did their strength testing and agility testing, tested the highest out. I think they said the highest out of all the players. Had the best tests, and he's just continuously improving himself and continuously looking at ways he can get better. And we saw that last season. He could have very well made the team last season out of camp. Granted, it was a different team, but he could have made that team out of camp. And it was, I think, more important to Iserman to send him back. And they said he was one of the last cuts. If we remember after preseason, he was like the last guy cut. And they said, you're going to go back to juniors. You're going to be amazing. And he did. He went back to juniors and he was amazing. And I think he has every opportunity this season to make the team. So I don't think it's a super hot take that he would make the team. Maybe it's a hot take that, and not even a hot take that he's a top 6 player, because I think that's what he should be from the get go, is a top 6 player. But I like it because I think Nate Danielson absolutely has a chance to make this team out of camp.
Yeah, it's hard to argue, mainly because it's really, I think, to your point, if one of them are making it, him being like a Casper or Danielson or whoever else, and Burgers is not signing to a cheap deal, then again, I go back to what I said earlier. He's on the outside looking in. And that's not necessarily a knock on him, because I still think that he can be a very solid role player on this team. But what role is that going to be? And we kind of have an idea of what some of these other guys in Grand Rapids are going to fit in as. And I think that's what is going to kind of set them apart, because they're going to be more than one aspect that they can bring. But you can still argue that with Burgers. You could still say he's a second, third line, fringe second, third line player, but he can also help you out tremendously on the power play, as we saw that time and time again in Grand Rapids. It's just the opportunity has not been really presented to him to do so in Detroit. So may not be as hot of a take as you think, but maybe because you added on the by the end of the year he's top two lines, that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah, my other small hot take, and you kind of alluded to it already, but you said that you think that the Wings are going to miss the playoff, and I'll tell you right now, and this I think is a hot take. If they miss the playoffs in 2024, 2025, you're going to see people, and I'm not saying that it's 100% right, but I think at this point you can start to question, is the Iser plan what we thought it was going to be? I do think it's a fair question. People will be calling for his head. I'm
They
telling you
already
that
are.
right now. But I'm saying, like, people will start calling into radio shows and saying, look, maybe Steve Eisenman's not who we thought.
97 won the ticket.
Again.
If you call into 97 won the ticket and talk about hockey, they hang up on you.
Yeah, you forget the difference
Yeah,
in
they hang up.
radio quality between Detroit and Boston here, Tyler.
No, but okay, but Woodward Sports Network and all that different stuff. There are people that
There
do
could be a
talk
change in
about hockey.
sentiment for the guys that maybe at Woodward, because you got Neil and Darren obviously trying to keep everyone pumping those brakes a little bit to make sure they're slow rolling themselves into this whole thing.
I think a rebuild takes a long period of time. Am I going to be disappointed if they if they miss the playoffs? Like, I think partially because you were so close last year, and the only reason you didn't make the playoffs last year was because of your own bullshit. I don't care about the Larkin injury. That's an internal situation. You can have a million different scenarios in which your best players get hurt. I remember in what was the year that they lost to Boston in 2014, I think it was. Johan Franzen was your number one center at points and times of that season. And guess what? You were still very productive and very good because you had some pretty good players still. But okay, not to go back that far, but like this is the year I think you almost have to make the playoffs. So there's going to be a lot of talk internally and externally about what in the fuck is going on. Do you have a coach firing? I'm not saying that should be, or any of this shit should be on the table, but I'm just telling you what would happen if they did miss the playoffs in 2024, 25.
Like I said, I think it would be, whether you agree with it or not, there are going to be more people that call, not, there are already people calling for Iserman to get fired, but there are going to be a lot more people questioning why this offseason was not much larger than he could have made it. And I don't think it's fair at that point to say the Iser plan has failed, because playoffs are not an end all be all. We're not the Nashville Predators. We don't hang banners for making the playoffs. You have to be a playoff team that contends. So you have to build up to a consistent playoff team. It's not a race to the playoffs, it's a race to be a consistent playoff appearance. And I think that's what's getting lost on a lot of people. Like, they think that once you make the playoffs, all your wildest dreams will come true. And that's not the case unless you have a team that's built to do that. And they were mad last season, and the team was not built to do that.
And you could argue that they would have done better than Washington, but and you should have
Oh,
taken care of
absolutely.
things before that. But the problem is that you look at most other sports, and you can have an instant gratification off season to make you a much better team. Baseball, maybe you can do that, but it's more difficult. It's kind of, you have to kind of play things out in the long game sense, sort of like hockey. Basketball, yes, you can immediately change everything for your after having a bad year and go into a new season and then be a playoff contending team, unless you're the Detroit Pistons. But I digress. Football, you absolutely can make those impact moves because that takes, again, everyone on the field. But if you have a good draft coupled with a few big free agency acquisitions, you can boom turn amazingly turn this thing around. We've seen that with the Lions over the last couple of years. So I get that it's been 8, 9 years for Detroit, but it literally was ripped down to the studs just less than 3 years ago, 3, 4 years ago. So it's either you had to go through that to now see the potential that we are at, because there's a lot of guys that we're not even talking about that just, for one, just got drafted or were drafted last season that are 2, 3 years away. And that's what's going to play into all these guys, other guys that we're talking about, along with Evanson, Casper, uh, Brandon Nygaard, Axel Sandin Palika. Like, all these guys play into this larger plan of long term success, and you need it. It also could open the door to other things in free agency, but for whatever reason, NHL is loyalty, or is all about loyalty, and they don't go crazy with trades like we see in the other sports, and that also plays into it. Baseball, you're going to get the blockbuster. Hockey, you maybe will get a blockbuster. NFL, absolutely get a blockbuster because they'll trade off draft picks left and right if it means they're getting one of the best players for a generational draft.
Hockey, you're lucky if you get a hockey trade,
Yeah,
right? Like a player for player, like straight up one for one, big name for big name hockey trade like that. That even
I
rarely
think
happens now.
general managers are gun shy.
I
well,
don't
the
know.
thing is too, though, to think about, I just saw a chart maybe a week, 2 weeks ago. The NHL is still driven money wise by what's coming through the gates.
Yeah, it is a gate driven league.
So you can't be as wild west with your guys to try to trade away prospects and things for short term success, because you start sucking, the gates start drying up. And that means a lot of money is not making it into the owner's pockets. And that makes people upset. So it's a little bit more difficult, I think, to that point to make those big moves to try to make things happen, because you don't have these larger rosters. And granted, MLB is a little bit different, but they've got 4 tiers of minor leagues, 5 tiers, that whatever it is. The NFL, you've got a 53-man roster on top of your 10 to 11 practice squad. The NHL's got, yeah, you have a 50-man contract limit. Other guys that you have responsibility over, but all said and done, you have a 23-man roster. So maybe 22, 21, depending on your contract, your cap situation. It's a lot more difficult to make those moves to be impactful and bring in that top tier type player without losing a lot of your organization.
I think the thing is with the NHL, I think, and especially a guy like Steve Eisman, he I don't know if it's an ego thing. I don't know if it's just kind of what he's done, so he's trying to recreate it. But I feel like he wants to always win the deal. And I feel like that sometimes you have to lose a deal to make things work going forward. I think he's always wants to win the deal. And again, Steve Eisman is a top 5 general manager in the NHL. there's still a lot to be said here about the Eisner plan, but it's fair to talk about it, in my opinion. It's fair to talk about it. Is it going to work? Do we think it's going to work? Yeah, we're still on the fence, but yeah, we think it's going to work. Is it going to take time? Yes, but they've gotten better every single year, so there is still something to be said for that, right? So if history repeats itself as it has the last 4 or 5 years, you are a playoff team, likely. Likely. I mean, points and stuff like that do vary every year. So whatever it took to get in the playoffs last year, it may take even more than that this year. But points wise, they should be better. I don't know how much better. I guess it really kind of depends on what happens with your young guys. And I hate to say that because a lot of the times when you say, if this goes right, then we'll be a playoff team. And the more ifs you have, the worse situations are. So I don't know. I mean, it's a situation worth talking about, I think, especially a summer conversation where we're kind of like digging for things to talk about, but like it is a fair conversation. I don't think Eiserman obviously like nothing is said and done here. There's still a lot of young guys that haven't even cracked North America yet. That could play into this
I'd say
situation.
at the end of the day, they're not worse. As of right now, at the end of the day, they're not worse. They have the potential to be better, but I don't think they are a worse team. All right. I'm going to light the world on fire. Ready? By the end of the 2024-25 season, Gary Bettman will retire as commissioner of the NHL. Gary Bettman is 72 years old currently. He was born in 1952. He gets booed every time he goes on the ice. He's made some historically bad decisions. He's led the league, 2 lockouts in his time as commissioner. I think it's time for Gary Bettman to retire. I think it is time for a fresh face and a fresh voice to take the NHL in a different direction. And if you can't retire and get out at like 73 years old and just like enjoy the millions of dollars you've made for yourself, you are a truly evil person who is ruining a sport. So I am going to say that Gary Bettman by the end of next season will retire and the NHL will have a new commissioner.
I think it's easy to say that Gary Bettman's a bad commissioner, and I do agree with that for the most part. But
Thank
the
you, Tyler.
NHL would not be in the situation that it's in right now if it wasn't for Gary Bettman. And I'm not saying that he is the sole reason why, but I'm talking about in terms of parity, in terms of how great the playoffs are for the most part. That's all it has to do with Gary Bettman and the salary cap that was implemented in 2004, 2005. Yes, we burned a whole season, but we got great hockey after that because of it.
Ovechkin would have already had the record.
Gary Bettman just
Likely.
he's always 2 steps behind all the other leagues. That is the problem. Is that he tries to be the NBA so bad but he's always doing things like the Walmart version of the NBA plan is what he tries to do, and their marketing team is god awful. And they keep trying to say they're going to grow the sport, but then they take away the initiatives and they tell teams they're not allowed to do things. And it's just like tries to do 1 step forward and 2 steps back, but it's like half a step forward and 5 steps back. And then he locks the league out. And then he says escrow and flat salary cap. And then it's just like I don't think there is a person on the face of the planet that is not being paid by the league that would tell you Gary Bettman is a good commissioner. I don't think you could get a person on here that says Gary Bettman is an amazing commissioner.
And you know what? He might be the best commissioner out of all the 4 sports.
Who? No way. There is zero way that Gary Bettman is better than Adam Silver. Zero.
Okay, Adam Silver is probably the best. But Roger Goodell is horrible, and Rob Manfred called the fucking World Series trophy a piece of metal.
Rob Manfred there's a difference between being a bad commissioner and being an idiot. Rob Manfred's just an idiot.
Yeah.
Bettman's kind of an idiot too.
So he's both. So he's a bad commissioner and an idiot. Like it's a horrible combination.
I think I think Manfred's done a lot of good things. But again, I think he's kind of an idiot too. So,
The pitch
anyways,
clock is one of the best things to come in sports in the past like 10 years.
what'd you say? Oh, the pitch clock? Yeah, I agree. But I think a lot of people were clamoring for that long before Manfred. I think he just was like, yeah, let's do this. But anyways, I think that Bill Daly is going to just be the same thing. I mean, he's literally
Mm,
Bettman's right hand man.
I think it'd be a big difference.
I think Bill Daly
Think so?
hates Gary Bettman. I think he secretly hates him.
He always has to cover his ass.
Yeah.
I mean, it is his right hand man, though. I mean, you got to think that they've been working together for a long period of time. I mean, you got to think a lot of the same philosophy.
Yeah, we can assume that all day, but I think with any new voice and change of leadership, I mean, I can relate it to the military. I had guys that were in charge of units and had their quote unquote right hand man, their lieutenant, for instance. The lieutenant, while they were great working together, as soon as that new lieutenant took over, shit shit hit the fan. Just some people aren't in a position where they know what they should probably do in the right situation. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he would be bad or great, but I wouldn't say that it's going to be exactly the same. It could, but I don't think it would be if that was a change.
On Greg's comment of like, the NHL is trying to grow this. Like, I don't know what else you do. Like, hockey's just not mainstream. I don't know how you make it mainstream. It's just not a mainstream sport.
Get
It never
better
has been.
marketing. Expand to other regions. Do more. Learn to play stuff all over the place. Get it on local television. Like, do the football route
agree
where
with that.
anyone with a TV and a digital tuner can watch hockey. That's the biggest thing, is that get rid of blackouts. Like, all these restrictions that they put on streaming, and like, today I've
Do
got
the
to go
first
watch
one.
the game on ESPN, but tomorrow I got to go watch it on Amazon, and Thursday it's Apple TV. Like what the MLB's doing now. Thursday's Apple TV, but then we got an Amazon Prime game, and then we've got a game here, and I missed 6 games because I don't have one of the stupid streaming services.
See, here's the problem though, is that every league, you meant all those things you just mentioned, they're all getting money, and a lot of
If
it.
you want to expand the game, you have to give a little somewhere. And I think where you could give a little somewhere is what the NFL did by Fox plays all NFL games. You go to Fox, you can watch your local team whenever they play, except for maybe one game out of the season. And that's just the way it is. And that is the way it should be with every single pro sport. And I
Yeah.
guarantee you want to grow the game. That's how you do it. You expose it to more people, and you get a marketing team that seems like they give a damn at their job. Because that's my biggest complaint about the NHL, is that their marketing is the worst out of all the pro sports. They're the worst at marketing their product. It's terrible.
How would you do it?
You what?
How would you do it?
Okay.
That's a
So
different
you're asking
episode.
me as a marketer how I would market the NHL. Okay, I'm gonna have to do an entire
Right, just
separate
like a
episode
quick
on that.
summary.
Yeah,
Just in a quick
there we go.
summary.
We'll do
how
that's
would
next
you,
week's episode. We'll talk about marketing for the NHL.
God, I gotta write up a fucking marketing plan for the NHL. Then what are you gonna do? Call me and give me a job?
We need 4 slides.
My problem is I feel like a lot of people want the NHL to be the NBA, and it's not going to be the NBA. You know why? Because the sports are played 2 different ways. The NBA is a star-driven league where the star is the reason why you win. In hockey, it's a team sport, and even if Connor McDavid is the best player in the NHL, his team doesn't always win, even against an inferior
The
opponent.
sport and action itself of the actual game more than makes up for that. Far more than makes up for that. You think people watch, you don't think someone says, oh, look, I love LeBron, and then they see 2 dudes beating the shit out of each other on the ice and huge hits and awesome plays, that kind of draws them in more than this team doesn't have a guy who owns the league? I don't think that's an issue.
Well, I didn't say it was an issue. I just don't think, like, a lot of people want the NHL to be marketed like the NBA. The NBA is marketed LeBron versus Kobe, or LeBron versus this one, LeBron versus Curry, LeBron versus the Celtics, Tatum versus Giannis, and like these
You could do that
like
with
kind of
each team, though.
Yeah, you have
Each
the
team
exact
has
same
their
thing you
own
can do with the NHL.
marquee player.
I just don't think
TNT
that's what
did a
hockey
great
wants
job
to
at actually
be,
pulling
though.
some of those games together this year. ESPN was straight hot garbage. Problem is a lot of these ownership groups, I think, is what we have to look at too, outside of just the NHL, because they've got the contracts in place. They're like, okay, we're good.
I don't know.
Uh,
I think that they are doing the least amount of work they could possibly be doing on marketing. It's not even passable. It's terrible. All right, so we went long. So we're gonna skip Ryan's final one and we're gonna do final thoughts. So we'll actually just start with Ryan for final thoughts.
Final thoughts are we need action, and then I'll have more to talk about. Maybe I'll give another hot take next week. Already ran 33.
Yeah, I mean, my final thoughts are getting closer and closer to the hockey season. There's a lot of things that need to be done still. I know I've kind of said this before, but there's a lot of things that need to be done. And we're getting closer and closer to where the rubber meets the road, where these things are gonna have to happen. So, I don't know. I mean, we could get off here and tomorrow morning see that Seider and Raymond both signed 8-year
It'll be the
extensions.
second I
Like,
post
would
this
I be
episode,
surprised
Tyler.
about that? Exactly. So I don't know. Those are my final thoughts. You can follow me on Twitter at
You
SealDog91.
can follow me online at Bringing the Win. You can follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. Again, please go check out our Patreon. We have 2 tiers, a $3 and a $5. We like to thank our patrons for just supporting the show, keeping the lights on, getting us our subs, helping us with all of that. So yeah, patreon.com/the Grindline Podcast. You can find our Patreon there. There will be more benefits coming as soon as the season starts, like extra content at the end of episodes specifically for our Patreon subscribers. So go head over there. Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on. We still have an exclusive t-shirt deal there. So go there, click on the Keep It Local tab and click on the Grindline Podcast, and you will find our stuff there as well. We like to thank the Hockey Podcast Network for hosting us and spreading us around. And you can check us out on YouTube, subscribe, and turn on notifications to get notified whenever an episode goes live. But that is going to do it for us tonight. So for Ryan and Tyler, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockey Town.